There are many things that the brain may be able to do that are at this time unknown. I have done extensive research on this subject by reading different articles about how different parts of the brain work. I have also read several books by doctors in this field. I have done this to ensure that the information that I'm providing is both accurate and true. The most complex organ in the human body, as described by scientists, is the brain, and when it is being discussed, it is broken up into the following sections: the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. First, I'm going to be discussing the frontal lobe and its functions. The frontal lobe sits at the front and top of our brain. Friedman Shire says that the frontal lobe is responsible for our thinking and our behaviors, such as judgment, impulse control, and attention. Donald Stuss and Robert Knight say that the most important function of the frontal lobe would be our impulse control, which stops us from saying rude or inappropriate things at wrong or unnecessary times. As we have discussed the frontal lobe, we are now going to be moving on to the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe sits directly behind our ears, and it is responsible for our auditory processing. Patel states that the frontal lobe is the second largest lobe in the brain. It is responsible for processing the information, the sounds that our ears hear. Song says that the most important function, or the most important part of the temporal lobe, would be the hippocampus, which takes the sounds that our ears hear and send to that area, and it processes those sounds and retrieves memories that would be associated with said sound. As we have discussed two of the major lobes of the brain, we are now going to be moving on to what is considered to be the most important lobe, the occipital lobe. The occipital lobe is the smallest lobe out of all the lobes in the brain. It is located directly in the back of the head, and it is responsible for interpreting the world around us, such as shapes, colors, and where objects are located at. Daniel Lowe states that the occipital lobe is made up of 3 of Brodmann's areas: 17, the primary visual cortex; number 18, the secondary visual cortex; and number 19, the associative visual cortex. Daniel Lowe also states that these 3 areas work together to process the information that our eyes receive and send it to other parts of the brain. This is considered to be one of the most important lobes of the brain, as it is responsible for what our eyes take in and what our eyes see around us. This speech has discussed the functions of how the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe work. The function of our brain can change and adapt throughout our lifetime, whether it be because of an accident that has happened or because it needs to adapt to changes that occur within our life. And I have chose not to use speaker notes for this speech.